Of the UNA Wind Ensemble, directed by Dr. Lloyd Jones. Thank you so much for your participation today, as well as family and special guest of Mr. Jonathan Pettus. Now to our speaker. Graduates, 30 years ago, today's guest speaker was one of you. A native of nearby Killen, Jonathan Pettus graduated from UNA with degrees in secondary education and math, and computer science and history. He taught math and computer programming and coached basketball at Coffee High School for a couple of years before his career shifted more into information technology and eventually led him to join NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville in 1991. You can see in your program the array of his responsibilities there that eventually led him to service in Washington as Chief Information Officer of NASA. He later came back to Alabama as Marshall's Chief Information Officer and currently serves as Associate Director of the Marshall Space Flight Center. Over the years, he's been involved with the International Space Station, the Space Shuttle program, the new Space Launch System, and NASA's operations in Russia. Mr. Pettus has received numerous commendations from NASA for success in his field, as well as the federal government's Meritorious Presidential Rank Award in 2008 and the Distinguished Presidential Rank Award in 2010. Mr. Pettus, his wife Angela, and their family now reside in Athens, and we're delighted that he could return to his alma mater to speak with you today. Please join me in giving a warm lion welcome to Mr. Jonathan Pettus.
Wow. Dr. Kitts, thank you for such a warm introduction. President Kitts, faculty, graduates, it is such an honor to be asked to come back here to my alma mater and to share this day with you. To the graduates, it's been almost exactly 30 years to the day that I sit where you sit right now. I remember the pride of knowing I had achieved an important milestone, the joy of celebrating that milestone with friends that I had made while I was in school here, but also I would say there was a mix of excitement, but also some fear in what the future might hold. Now, you young people today have no idea what a scary world 1987 was. I was graduating into a world of economic uncertainty, a country deeply divided politically over things like tax cuts and whether we had a good president or a bad president. We lived with the threat of nuclear attack. We were worried about terrorist attacks. And new technologies like the personal computer were having a major disruptive effect on jobs and business. Sound familiar? So I've been in your shoes, and having been in those shoes, I want to try and share some thoughts in the next few minutes that at least may ease some of the angst some of you may be feeling. Now, when I first received the invitation from the university, I was so honored and excited to be asked, but I did begin to wonder, what have I done to deserve such an honor? Now, it first occurred to me that it must be my illustrious academic record while I was a student here. In just a few minutes, as is tradition, the university will recognize the graduating senior with the highest GPA as the recipient of the coveted Keller Key. And I am so proud to tell you that on my graduation night 30 years ago, I took home the Keller Key. Thank you. Now, there is one detail that I left out. And that was because my then fiance, Angela, and now my wife of 29 years, graduated with me that night, and she actually had the highest GPA, and she won the Keller Key. But we did ride together, and I did take her home, so technically it's accurate to say that I took home the Keller Key. However, I do deserve some credit, I think, for marrying someone more intelligent than me. That's the first life tip, kids. Marry, from an intelligence standpoint, marry up. On my big day 30 years, I will say it is actually very nice to finally get some attention at a UNA graduation. 30 years ago, right after the ceremony, I think it was right down here, Angela and I were chatting, and the university photographer actually said, "Sir, I don't know who you are, but could you move out of the way so we could get a picture of Angela with Dr. Galat, who was the president then?" Now, that's understandable. But then my mom and dad said, "Jonathan, would you mind moving out of the way so we could get a picture of Angela with her Keller key?" Today we were driving over this morning and I said, "Angela, 30 years ago, in your wildest dreams, could you ever have imagined that we would be driving here and I would be doing the commencement speech?" And she said, "Jonathan, I hate to break it to you, but you're not in my wildest dreams." I didn't run that line by her, so hope I'm okay. What I do know, she has a way of keeping me humble. What I do know is that I think this honor has fallen on me because of the great organization and team that I've been part of. I am so blessed to be part of the NASA team, an organization with such a lofty and incredible mission. I get to work with people who do amazing things. People at Marshall built and tested the Saturn V rocket that took us to the moon. They built the propulsion systems that powered the space shuttle for 135 launches over a 30-year period. And today I work with people who built the International Space Station that's flying above us right now, 250 miles above the Earth, traveling at 17,000 miles per hour, so fast that the station orbits the Earth every 92 minutes. 6 crew members from the United States, Italy, and Russia are living and working up there right now. And the space station has been continuously occupied for 17 straight years. This spring, there will be high school graduates that will graduate, and their whole life someone has been living and working in space. I work with people that built and manage today the Hubble Space Telescope that enables us to peer deep into the heart of the universe and see 13 billion light years into our past. I work with people who manage the New Horizons mission, where we built and launched a spacecraft that traveled 3 billion miles over 9 years to the planet Pluto. Now, yes, when I was at UNA, we still called it a planet, so I call it a planet. We beamed pictures, we were able to beam the pictures back to Earth. It flew within 7,000 miles of the planet. We beamed pictures. You may have seen some of those spectacular images of the planet Pluto over our network. Now, I'll admit, I'm like a lot of guys. I try to impress my wife and kids about what I do at work every now and then. So that night I came home, that night of the New Horizons flyby, and the images were all over the national news and the media. And I said, "Angela, isn't it amazing that we built a data network that can enable a spacecraft that is 3 billion miles away to send those images back to Earth?" And she said, "That's real good, Jonathan. So if you're so smart, how about seeing if you can get that router in our living room to reach upstairs, like I've been asking you to?" And now we're working on the next great American rocket, one that will put the moon, Mars, and other deep space worlds in reach of humankind. It's called the Space Launch System. We call it SLS, and it will be the most powerful rocket ever created. When fully assembled on the launch pad, SLS will stand over 325 feet tall and be capable of generating 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. That's equivalent to 160,000 Corvette engines. We just finished manufacturing all the major flight hardware for its first mission, and we're now testing all of those components to ensure the rocket is ready to launch for 2019, December 2019, actually, 2 years from now. It will give the United States the capability to take humans deeper into space than we've ever flown and give us the transportation platform that can enable trips back to the moon and a gateway for eventually humans traveling to Mars. So I'm here not really because of what I've achieved, but because I am part of a NASA team, part of a team that has achieved so much through the years and continues to dream about the future. So given that, what can I share with you maybe today in a few moments about your future? Consider that new rocket, the Space Launch System that we're building and testing right now. What's the purpose of a rocket and what does it take for it to achieve its mission? A rocket's purpose is to overcome the force of gravity and lift its payload, including humans, beyond Earth's atmosphere and toward a destination in space. Doesn't that kind of sound like where you are right now in a way? You're all like rockets sitting on a launch pad, and you have untested potential to go to places that you can't even imagine. But what will it take in order for you to get there? It might be helpful to think about what it takes for a rocket to achieve its mission. First, you need a launching pad that provides a stable starting point. I believe that whether you've lived a charmed life to this point or overcome very difficult circumstances to get here, you've all made it here today to graduation. I'm so impressed and have so much respect for UNA and what it means to me and what it has meant. I really didn't appreciate how much I learned here and how much I grew here while it was happening, but I can see it now. For me, it was a place where professors like Dr. Patricia Roden and Dr. Eddie Joe Bracken actually knew my name, and they still know my name today. It was a place that challenged me, where I learned how to study and how to work, and that there were consequences when you didn't. I remember paying a required visit to my counselor midway through the first semester of my sophomore year, and I was expecting to be congratulated for my solid, low B average. He looked at my grades and my ACT score, and he said, "Mr. Pettus, it appears to me that you're underachieving." He asked, "Are you okay with not doing your best? It's not the numeric score of your grades that matter, but it is a question of are you okay with mediocrity?" Just something for you to think about. That feedback was short and tough, but it had a lasting impact on me. I don't think I made another B the rest of my college career, but that really wasn't what was important. What was important was learning that it was my decision whether to accept mediocrity or work for excellence. And as I walk around campus today and see how it's grown and improved, I can see that this place is still about excellence. I know that this university has provided you with an opportunity to learn in the classroom and mature as a person through your experiences here. You should have confidence as you graduate today that you are prepared and ready for launch. UNA has given you a great launching pad. The second thing a rocket needs is fuel. Two of the most important pieces of the new rocket that we're building are the liquid hydrogen tank and the liquid oxygen tank. And they provide the fuel necessary to lift a 5.5 million pound rocket into space. You too will need fuel for your journey. It's going to come from people around you that you learn from, that give you energy, encouragement, love, and support to help you along the way. Look around you. I bet some of your best sources of fuel are here with you today to see you. Don't take them for granted. One example of someone who helped fuel my tank was a man named Harlan Hill. Now, some of you will remember him. He graduated from this institution when it was Florence State Teachers College and went on to star for the Chicago Bears in the NFL. He was Rookie of the Year in 1954 and Most Valuable Player in 1955. But I knew him as my principal and coach at Brooks High School. Coach Hill helped fuel my rocket by teaching me the importance of focusing on what you can control and not obsessing over those things you can't. He would constantly remind us that there are two things you can control in life: your attitude and your effort. He said to work on a positive mindset and that it was okay to fail, but it was never okay to be outworked. When you remember teaching like that from 35 years ago, that's real fuel. And don't be fooled by false fuel. The real fuel comes from people who are there for you when times are rough, when you need a boost. The third thing that's required for a successful mission is fire. That's probably the image we have and think of most when we think of a rocket launch. The fire blasting from the rocket engine nozzles. That fire is essentially creating the force necessary to propel the rocket through Earth's gravity and into space. You can reach your greatest potential when you have a fire, a passion for what you do. I'm thankful for my father and my mother, Ronald and Brenda, who graduated from Florence State as well. And they were both school teachers, and they helped nurture in me a fire, a passion for learning at an early age. My mom, some of my earliest memories were my mom and dad watching the Apollo moon landings with me. My mom would read me books about space before bed, and they threw a NASA-themed birthday party for me when I was 5 years old. Dad took me to see the first space shuttle, Enterprise, when it arrived in Huntsville when I was in middle school. My parents sparked a fire that has carried me on my journey and still carries me today. But fire is both a necessity for spaceflight and also the greatest risk in spaceflight. Fire can lead to disaster. On a cold January day in 1986, I was driving back to campus for my data structures class over here across the street up on the hill at the math building. I'd gone to grab a burger for lunch, and just as I arrived back at campus, I heard the news that something terrible had happened to Space Shuttle Challenger as it climbed through the sky. We lost 7 brave astronauts that day. I remember us all sitting in class and wondering what our professor, Dr. Oscar Beck, would do. He came in and he said, "You've all probably heard the terrible news regarding the space shuttle." And he went on to tell us how he had friends at Marshall who worked in the program, including some former students, and we should all remember them because this was going to be a tough day. We wondered if he would cancel class, but I remember him saying that the best way we could honor their loss was to spend the next 90 minutes learning, and working. See, Dr. Beck was really modeling what NASA and the country did in response to that tragic day. Don't quit, learn from our mistakes, and go back to work. Dr. Beck taught us a lot more than data structures that day, and I'll never forget it. What the crew of the Challenger knew was our greatest experiences and accomplishments come when we are willing to take risk. If we wanted to be completely safe and eliminate the risk of spaceflight, we would never light the rocket. We would be safe, but we wouldn't go anywhere. That's the way life works too. Find your passion and be willing to take a risk to fulfill it. When you fail, learn from it and move on. Now, a rocket also needs a guidance and navigation system in order to keep it on track and adjust the course when necessary. Make no mistake about it, this may or may not be the end of your formal education, but you're going to need to keep learning the rest of your life. Be curious and remain agile. Most every field is being disrupted and impacted by technology and societal changes. You need to be open to new ideas, new approaches, and new information. You need to be able to take what you learn, feed them into your flight computer, adjust course, and continue on your journey. And all along the way, I think it's critical to have a guide to believe in and follow that's bigger than yourself. For me, it's a faith that we have a final destination that is not attainable through human effort, but only through the grace of God. And finally, a rocket needs a destination or a purpose, and you're going to need one too. Last week, I had the incredible honor of spending the better part of a day with Harrison Schmitt. He's now 82 years old, and he's the last living man to have walked on the moon as part of Apollo 17. And he was at Marshall to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the Apollo 17 mission. We talked about the legacy of the Apollo program and how it's such a perfect example of what we humans can do when we're all unified and committed to a clear purpose, even when the destination seems impossible. Now, there are lots of good reasons to explore space. There's scientific benefits, defense benefits, and economic benefits. And these are all important. But I think the greatest benefit might be a bit more abstract. I think we explore because of how it inspires us. At a time when it feels like so much divides us, exploring space, seeing a successful rocket launch, seeing a view of the Earth from space station, or close-up pics of Pluto reminds us of what we humans can do and who we can be when we're at our best. What does that have to do with you finding your purpose? Right now in our country, we have so much that divides us. But this great experiment, the one we are all part of, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, it's at risk when we cannot no longer come together around those things that unify us. The principles of liberty, freedom, and service to our fellow man. What do you think the antidote to that threat is? I don't think it's in electing the right politician or winning the latest argument or creating new laws or programs, although sometimes those can help. I believe the answer is really us. It's you and it's me, finding a greater purpose. Maybe our most important purpose is not about what great heights we can achieve in terms of stature, acclaim, or wealth. Someone will leave here today and become a nurse that spends their career caring for people in the dark times of illness. Someone will leave here and become a teacher. They will dedicate their life, like my mom, my dad, and Coach Hill, to educating and developing young people. Many of you will find success in business and create wealth and opportunities for others. Some will create great art or music that inspires and encourages others. These are the kind of things that bring us together and allows this grand experiment to continue. So maybe, just maybe, it's not about how high or far our rocket travels, but how many other rockets we help lift off the launch pad along the journey. One final note. Last week I mentioned to Harrison Schmitt that I would be doing this commencement speech, and I asked Harrison if he had a message for you. He thought for a moment and he replied, "Time is relentless, so tell them to make the most of it." So I said, "Harrison, the last living man to walk on the moon, I think you just wrote the end of my speech. So congratulations, class of 2017. Good luck and Godspeed on your journey."
Thank you, Mr. Pettus.